Welcome to our channel, Pencil Guy. Today I have prepared for you a compilation of our best videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing. In the first part of the video, you will learn about the religions of the world. Christianity is a world religion that began about 33 years ago in Israel. It was based on the life and teachings of Jesus Christ described in the New Testament, as well as developed in the sermons of his apostles and the teachings of the Church Fathers. Christians believe that Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah, the Son of God and the Savior of men. After he was crucified on the cross, he rose and became incarnate in the flesh, redeeming the sins of people and opening the way to salvation. Christianity is the largest religion of the Abrahams and around the world, both in terms of the number of adherents, of which there are about 2.5 billion, and in terms of geographical distribution. There is at least one Christian community in every country in the world. The main Christian trends include Catholicism of about 1.3 billion believers, Protestantism of about 800,000 people, Orthodoxy of about 280,000 people, and the ancient Eastern Orthodox churches and the Eastern Assyrian Church of about 70 to 80,000 people. Islam is a worldwide, monotheistic Abrahamic religion, the second largest in number of adherents after Christianity. In 2022, the number of adherents amounted to approximately 1.9 billion people living in more than 125 countries around the world. Islam appeared in the 7th century. The Prophet Muhammad, 570 to 632, was the founder of Islam. The Quran is a holy book. Hadith is a collection of sayings and deeds of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as the Sunnah, the second main source of Islamic doctrine and law. Sharia is a confession of faith, prayer, fasting. Zakat is a mandatory charity to the poor and pilgrimage. Islam is the state or official religion in 28 countries around the world. The majority of Muslims are Sunnis, 85 to 90% of them are Shiites and Ibadis. In addition, the directions are divided into mazhabs. Arabic is used in worship. People who adhere to Islam are called Muslims. Islam originated in Mecca, the center of paganism in Western Arabia, at the beginning of the 7th century. Hinduism is one of the religions of India, which is often described as a set of religious and philosophical traditions and schools that originated in the Indian subcontinent and have common features. Sanatana Dharma, the historical names of Hinduism, means eternal religion, eternal path, or eternal law. The Vedic, Harappan, and Dravidian civilizations are the ancestors of Hinduism. Hinduism does not have a single founder, like other Abrahamic religions, and it does not have a single belief system or a single doctrine. Indian Hinduism includes many different religious traditions, philosophical concepts, and beliefs based on monotheism, polytheism, panentheism, monism, and even atheism. Dharma, karma, samsara, maya, moksha, and yoga are typical religious positions of Hinduism. Buddhism, the Buddha's Dharma, also known as Dharma Vinaya, which means doctrines and disciplines, is an Indian religion or philosophical tradition based on several original teachings that Gautama Buddha passed on to his followers. Buddhism originated as a tradition of shamans in ancient India between the 6th and 4th centuries BC and spread across most of Asia. With over 520 million followers, accounting for over 7% of the world's population, it is the 4th largest religion in the world. Buddhism, based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, who lived in the 5th or 4th centuries BC, and his subsequent philosophical interpretations, includes many different traditions, beliefs, and spiritual practices. In 2010, it was estimated that the number of Buddhists was between 450 and 500 million people. Sikhism is a monotheistic Indian religion founded in Punjab in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent in the 15th century. Punjab was the meeting place of Islam and Hinduism, and was founded by Guru Nanak between 1469 and 1539. Sikhs are an influential ethnic and religious group in India, making up about 2% of the country's population. There are more than 25 million followers of Sikhism worldwide. Almost all of them are from Punjab. Judaism, also known as the Jewish religion, is the monotheistic, traditional, and ethnic religion of the Jewish people. It originated in the 2nd millennium BC. It is the oldest of all existing monotheistic religions. The basic principle of Judaism is the absolute monotheistic faith in one God. Judaism is a religious, national, and ethical worldview, culture, and civilization. Mostly Jews adhere to a certain religion. Judaism, like Christianity and Islam, belong to the Abrahamic religions. According to Halacha, the Jewish religious law, Jews include those who were born to a Jewish mother and those who converted to Judaism according to the Giyur rite. According to the laws of Judaism, those who have passed the Giyur are considered Jews, because the religious and ethnic aspects of Jewish identity cannot be separated. The ideas of what a Jew and a Jew are historically related to each other, and many languages cannot distinguish them from each other. In 2018, the number of Jews worldwide was 14.6 million, which is approximately 0.2% of the total population. About 44.9% of Jews live in Israel, and another 41.7% live in the United States and Canada. The majority of the remaining Jews live in Europe, accounting for 9.2%. Satanism, a number of occult and religious beliefs, worldviews, and beliefs formed in the 19th century, represents Satan as a symbol of power and freedom. Some satanic cults are seen as a way to reject Christianity. They exist because Satan seems to think that his followers are the most powerful and have more opportunities to give them what they need. The days that the Black Mass is usually timed to coincide with Walpurgisnacht, Lames, on August 1st, the night of the fern bloom, the night of every full moon. Anton Sandor Lavey claimed that the most significant holiday of a Satanist is his own birthday. Anton Lavey founded the Church of Satan in the United States, which proclaims itself a conscious bearer of evil and the antipode of Christianity. The first officially registered organization to recognize Satanism as its ideological basis. According to the Great Encyclopedia Terra, the Church of Satan is chronologically the first of the satanic sections. Satanism is often replaced by youth subcultures that preach the cult of death. The following moral values prevail in the relations between the members of these subcultures: permissiveness, animal existence, vindictiveness. Atheism is the rejection of belief in the existence of any god or the non-existence of gods. Theism, which is usually defined as the belief in the existence of one or more gods, is the opposite of atheism. Many people who adhere to atheism also understand it as a rejection of any kind of supernatural, such as gods, spirits, other forces and beings existing outside the body, as well as the afterlife. In relation to religion, atheism is a worldview that denies religion as a belief in the supernatural. All religions, including the religions of revelation, share the idea of atheism, which is that the natural world is independent and that humanity does not originate from the supernatural. Many people who consider themselves atheists cite the lack of factual evidence of the existence of any supernatural beings, phenomena, and forces. Others use history, philosophy, or sociology to prove that they are atheists. Most people who do not adhere to atheism adhere to secular philosophies such as naturalism and humanism. There are no general principles or norms of behavior for atheists. In the second part of the video, you will be able to get acquainted with various gods of ancient Greece. Is it interesting? Look further. Kronos in Greek mythology, also called Kronos, was a titan of the era. He was the youngest of 22 titans and the son of Uranus of heaven and Gaia of earth. The titanide of fertility Rhea was the wife of Kronos, and they had 6 children, who are now called the Olympian gods. Kronos devoured his children after birth, fearing that one of them would overthrow him. However, the 6th child, Zeus, thanks to the cunning of his mother, was able to avoid this fate. Growing up, Zeus freed his brothers and sisters from the womb of Kronos and became a new god. Kronos represents not only time, but also the cycle of life and death, harvest and destiny. His image is often accompanied by a sickle, which serves as a symbol of time and harvest. Zeus in ancient Greek mythology is the god of heaven, thunder, and lightning who rules the universe. The third son of the Titan Kronos and the Titanide Rhea, brother of Hades, Hera, Hestia, Demeter, and Poseidon. Hera is a goddess, the wife of Zeus. He was identified with Jupiter in Roman mythology. Zeus had a shield and a double-sided axe labris, sometimes an eagle. It was believed that his residence was Olympus Zeus the Olympian. Zeus was believed to be a fire or hot substance living in the ether and controlling the sky, creating a center of cosmic and social life. In addition, Zeus created a sense of shame and conscience in people and divided good and evil. Zeus is a formidable force, sometimes associated with fate. He has the ability to foresee the future. Hera in Greek mythology is the queen of the gods, the patroness of family, marriage, and femininity. She is the wife and elder sister of the supreme god Zeus. Hera is known for her jealous and cunning character, who pursues both Zeus' mistresses and his children. She possesses strong magic, which she often uses to achieve her goals. Hera also serves as a symbol of conjugal love and devotion. The cow, the cuckoo, and the peacock are her sacred animals. In Roman mythology, she is associated with the goddess Juno. Athena in Greek mythology is the goddess of wisdom, strategy, craft, and just war. The daughter of the king of the gods Zeus, she was born from his head in full attire. The city of Athens was named after the patron saint of Athens. She is known for her coolness, wisdom, and strategic mind. Athena, the goddess of craft, is also often depicted with a loom or spinning wheel. She gives the heroes wise advice and strategic plans to help them in their missions. Athena is a symbol of order and civility. The snake and the owl are her sacred animals. In Roman mythology, she is associated with the goddess Minerva. Athena was one of the most revered goddesses in the Greek pantheon, and people are still inspired by her image. Aphrodite in Greek mythology is the goddess of love, beauty, passion, fertility, and pleasure. She is one of the 12 Olympians and was born from the foam of the sea. Aphrodite is known for her impeccable beauty and charms that can make anyone fall in love with her. She has many admirers among both humans and gods. Aphrodite protects lovers and helps them find and keep their love. She is also considered the goddess of marriage and family, but is also considered the goddess of prostitution. Aphrodite is usually depicted as a gorgeous woman with long golden hair, surrounded by doves and myrtles. An apple, a rose, a shell, and a mirror are her symbols. In Roman mythology, she is associated with the goddess Venus. Ares in Greek mythology is the god of war, hatred, and devastation. He is the son of the gods Zeus and Hera, the queen of the gods. The address represents a fierce and merciless war. He loves battles and enjoys chaos and destruction. He is usually depicted as a strong warrior with a shield and a bloody sword. Ares is not much loved either by the gods or by people who value the world. The spear, the shield, the rooster, and the dog are his symbols. In Roman mythology, he is associated with the god Mars. In Greek myths, Ares plays an important role, for example, in the story of the Trojan War, where he helps the Trojans. Apollo in Greek mythology is the god of light, music, poetry, divination, medicine, and the arts. He is the son of Leto and Zeus, king of the gods, and is one of the 12 Olympians. Apollo is known for his wisdom, talent, and beauty. Poets, musicians, artists, and medical professionals are considered his patrons. The god of predictions Apollo also owns an oracle in Delphi, where he gives people advice and predictions. He is often depicted as an attractive young man with a lyre and a bow and arrow. It includes laurel, Kifra, swan, and dolphin. In Roman mythology, he is associated with the god Phoebus. Artemis in Greek mythology is the goddess of hunting, wildlife, virginity, the moon, and childbirth. She is the daughter of the king of the gods Zeus and the twin sister of Apollo. Artemis is known for her courage, strength, and archery skills. She reveres hunters, wild animals, and young women. Artemis is usually depicted as a young girl with a bow and arrow who rides with deer. Doe, cypress, bear, and bow are her symbols. In Roman mythology, she is associated with the goddess Diana. Artemis was one of the most revered goddesses in the Greek pantheon, and to this day her image inspires people. Dionysus in Greek mythology is the god of winemaking, fertility, inspiration, ritual madness, and theater. He is the son of the king of the gods Zeus and the mortal woman Semele. Although sometimes people doubt his divinity, Dionysus is one of the 12 Olympians. He is known for his mysteries in which participants fall into an ecstatic state as a result of dancing, music, and wine. Dionysus patronizes poets, musicians, winemakers, and actors. He is usually depicted as a young man holding a cup of wine or a vine in his hand. Grapes, wine, ivy, thyrsus, and leopard are its symbols. Hermes in Greek mythology is the god of commerce, speech, theft, travel, sports, and ingenuity. He is the son of the king of the gods Zeus and the nymph Maia. He is known to be smart, dexterous, and eloquent. Hermes patronizes travelers, merchants, thieves, athletes, and speakers. The turtle, the rooster, the fox, and the caduceus are his symbols. One of the most famous and complex gods of the Greek pantheon is Hermes, and people still perceive his image. Demeter in Greek mythology is the goddess of agriculture, fertility, spring, harvest, and sacred marriage. She is one of the 12 Olympians, the daughter of the titans Kronos and Rhea. Demeter is a symbol of the fertile land and the source of life. She patronizes gardeners, farmers, and all others who depend on the harvest. Demeter is usually depicted as a mature woman with a wreath of wheat ears hanging on her head. A sheaf of wheat, a sickle, a poppy, and a torch are its symbols. In Roman mythology, its symbol is the goddess Ceres. Hades in Greek mythology is the god of wealth, the underworld, and the dead. The son of titans Kronos and Rhea, he is one of the 12 Olympians. Hades is often called Pluto, which translates as rich. He controls the shadows and judges the souls of the dead. Although Hades rarely leaves the underworld, his powers are enormous. He is often depicted as a gloomy man with a scepter in his hand and a crown on his head. Cerberus, cypress, and pomegranate are symbols of Hades. Hades is not the god of evil, but rather the just ruler of his kingdom. Now I would like to show you about the generations that have existed for the last 150 years on our Earth. The lost generation, who are they? These are people who were better known for their existence during the war. The term lost generation appeared in the period between the two world wars. It describes a generation of people who were born in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and whose youth fell during the First World War. This term came from Gertrude Stein. She called them people who fought in the First. The lost generation is defined as the cohort born from 1883 to 1900, those who grew up during the war and went into service, those who lived through a stormy 20 years. Around 20 million people died worldwide, and about 20 million more were injured. The war left a deep mark on their psyche. They experienced the horrors of trench life, the loss of loved ones, the collapse of ideals. They could not find themselves in a peaceful life. The values that they were instilled with in childhood had become devalued. They were disappointed in a society that, in their opinion, had done nothing to prevent the war. They felt alienated from their peers who did not fight. Ernest Hemingway, Eric Maria Remarque, Gertrude Stein, these are writers who have had a great impact on that generation. In their works, these writers expressed a sense of disappointment, alienation, and the search for the meaning of life. The Great Generation, also known as the Generation of Soldiers, formed from 1901 to 1927. Most of the representatives of the Great Generation are the parents of the Silent Generation and the Baby Boomer Generation. The first person to use the term Great Generation was James Van Fleet in 1953. As of 2023, approximately 1% of the Great Generation remained alive. This is about 119,500 people from 16 million Americans who served in World War II. The Great Generation is not just people whose existence fell on a period of wars. This is a generation of heroes who stood up in the face of adversity, defended their homeland, and laid the foundations for a peaceful future. Peaceful life did not bring them the desired peace. The world they fought so desperately for seemed alien and incomprehensible to them. The Great Generation is a generation of heroes that will forever remain in our memory. And representatives of this generation are already over 90 or 100 years old. Silent Generation. This is the generation that was after the Greatest Generation and precedes the Baby Boomer generation. They were formed from 1928 to 1945. According to the United States, as of 2019, there are only 23 million people from the Silent Generation. The silence of this generation speaks louder than any words. The historical incidents of those times are the Great Depression in the 30s and the Second World War in the 40s. Because of such a crisis, there was a very small population of this generation in the world. But despite their taciturnity, they also stood up for their civil rights. Today, most representatives of the Silent Generation have already crossed the 90-year mark, but their influence on the world is not weakening. They continue to be opinion leaders. Baby Boomers Generation. This generation is called the Baby Boomer generation. They followed the silent ones and precede Generation X. This generation was formed in 1946 to 1964 during the baby boom. By their characteristic name, you can understand what is inherent in them. During the time of the baby boomers in the 1950s and 1960s, there were many reforms in all areas. A great economic growth has begun, various technologies have begun to appear, which are now very well developed in our time. Their cohort has evoked a very specific culture around them. As I said before, the baby boom generation speaks for itself. Their time had a very large increase in population. This is due to the fact that there were post-war years, people were focused on rebuilding the population, a new healthier generation was growing up, they had a healthy psyche, they began to live at a different time, they had greater benefits than their ancestors. Generation X are people born between 1965 and 1980. They found themselves in the shadow of their predecessors, the baby boomer generation, and the predecessors of their children, Generation Z. Generation X is a generation that combines the experience of the past and the dynamism of the future. Like ghosts gliding between epochs, Generation X eludes clear definitions. Their childhood was washed by waves of change, and their youth was overwhelmed by the storm of the 90s. They witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the USSR, and the rapid development of technology. In a period of change, in the 70s and 80s, when social values were changing, Generation X, as children, often found an empty house after returning from school. They became owners of the key, a symbol of independence at a young age, which gave them the name Generation of Lopics. Some of the many cultural influences on the youth of Generation X included the spread of musical genres with strong socio-tribal identities, such as alternative rock, hip-hop, punk, post-punk, rave, and heavy metal, in addition to later forms developed by the representatives of Generation X. Millennials, also called Generation Y or Gen Y, make up the demographic cohort that follows Generation X and preceding Generation Z. Millennials in the United States make up a relatively large portion of the country's population, unlike their counterparts in most other developed countries. What influences the economy and geopolitics of the country? But Americans who came of age in the 2010s were less religious and sexually inclined than their predecessors. William Strauss and Neil Howe created the theory of Howe generations, and in 1987 they coined the term millennial, given that the oldest members of this demographic cohort had come of age around the turn of the third millennium AD. In their books Generations, A History of America's Future from 1584 to 2069, 1991, and the Millennial Uprising, the next Great Generation 2000, they wrote about this cohort. Due to the significant increase in the birth rate from the early 1980s to the mid-1990s and the large size of their generation. Compared to the boomer generation, millionaires are sometimes called echo boomers. The birth rate in the United States peaked in August 1990, and the trend towards the decline in the number of families in the developed countries of the 20th century continued. This is the generation of millennials who have also been described as the first generation to grow up on the internet. The Zoomer generation is often abbreviated as Gen Z. This is a generation of people born from 1997 to 2012. It corresponds to the theory of generations developed by I.L. Howe and William Strauss. The members of the generation are called Zoomers, Centennials, Homelanders, Pluralists, IGeners, and the New Silent Ones. Representatives of Generation Z actively use 3D reality, tablets, and smartphones. At a conscious age, people can access the internet practically anywhere and at any time using your mobile phones, smartphones, or handheld devices. Many people think that Generation Z and digital man are synonymous. Generation Z is interested in art, science, and technology. For example, researchers predict that many representatives of the generation will be engaged in robotics, biomedicine, and engineering disciplines. In addition, Generation Z is the first generation born during the time of globalization and postmodernism. Many parents from Generation Z work part-time or even take on the responsibility of working from home to devote more time to raising their children. Security issues are at the center of public attention. In Japan, Generation Z is called Neo-Digital Aborigines and Generation Y is called Digital Aborigines. Digital Aborigines mostly communicate by text or voice, whereas non-digital Aborigines use video telephony, and other means of communication. This highlights the transition from text format to video format and from PCs to smartphones to the non-digital generation. Alpha generation. The term alpha generation is used worldwide to describe the generation of people born from the early 2010s to the mid-2020s. The alpha generation is the first fully born generation in the 21st century. It was named after the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Most children of the alpha generation are millennials, less often Zoomers. During the birth of the alpha generation, the birth rate in many countries of the world decreased. Smart technologies, social networks, and streaming services are becoming increasingly dominant elements of children's entertainment, while interest in traditional television is declining. Compared to previous generations, this generation received earlier training due to changes in the use of technology in classrooms and other areas of life. According to research, allergies, obesity, and other health problems, screen time-related issues have become increasingly common among children in recent years. In the last part of the video, you will be able to get acquainted with different types of relationships. Friend zone relationships. In popular culture, a friend zone, also known as a friend zone, describes a situation in which one person with whom they have a mutual friendship wants to enter into a romantic or sexual relationship with another person, but the other does not do so. It is said that a person whose romantic advances were rejected entered or placed in the friend zone with the feeling that he was stuck there. There are many friend zones on the internet. However, over time, the term has spread to middle schools, high schools, and colleges, where young people reveal their individuality in relationships and dating. Some criticize the friend zone as misogyny because they believe it implies that women should enter into romantic relationships with men who are not interested, simply because men have been kind to them. However, this term refers to all forms of unrequited affection, and it is not necessary that a man likes a woman. There is also a connection between this and the good guy syndrome. The American television series Friends, 1994, made this term popular. In the 7th episode of the first season, the Blackout episode, Joey Tribbiani tells him that when Ross Geller meets Rachel Green, they have a short period of time during which they can have a romantic relationship, although Ross has already gone beyond that. After this time, they will be in the friend zone if they see each other, and therefore any romantic relationship is impossible, even if one of the parties wants to be the lover of the other. Abusive relationships are relationships in which a partner humiliates, and uses cruelty in communication and actions in order to suppress the will of the victim. In this type of relationship, the victim and the aggressor do not change places. The victim cannot get out of this relationship for a number of reasons. Both men and women can be abusers, but their difference is that each of them has a negative impact on their partner in different ways. Unlike women, men are more likely to use physical and sexual violence. An abuser is a term that describes a person who uses violent methods, such as physical, psychological, or economic violence, to achieve their goal. Abusive relationships are pejorative relationships between a tyrant and a victim, accompanied by constant manipulation with money, blackmail, threats, and physical abuse, as well as moral bullying on the part of the aggressor. A romantic relationship. Romance exists in every Western culture. We can see this in movies, TV shows, and commercials. The music tells us that. We read about it in books, fortune cookies, and astrology. Even in sports, romance manifests itself when one partner proposes to another on the big screen. These messages remind us that we need emotional needs and close interpersonal relationships. Baumeister and Leary believe that humanity's primary motivation is the need to belong and develop meaningful, positive interpersonal relationships. In addition, they argue that non-romantic relationships cannot bring the same joy as romantic relationships. We get certain images and words from the media. Let's start by exploring the changing understanding of romantic relationships to better understand this goal. A romantic relationship is defined as an interaction between two partners that is mutual, permanent, and voluntary, and is characterized by certain signs of connection and intimacy. Modern ideas about romantic relationships are reflected in this definition. Codependent relationships. More than 40 years ago, American psychiatrist Stephen Cartman developed the triangle of fate, also known as the dramatic triangle, which is a psychological and social model of interaction between people consisting of three roles: a rescuer, a victim, and a stalker. The Cartman triangle shows the structure of interdependence. The teacher controls, imposes his point of view, does not allow mistakes, and is constantly looking for those to blame. He blackmails and manipulates when he cannot express his anger. The victim forgets about his needs and dissolves into the stalker, with whom it seems to her that she is connected by true love. When she thinks about her loss, she panics. The rescuer feels valued by offering help and surpassing the victim. In a codependent relationship, each person at some point tries on one of the three roles, but he cannot get out of this circle of events because he is afraid and denies the destructiveness of circumstances. Open relationships. Participants in an open relationship want to be together, but agree to a non-monogamous relationship. Thus, people who are in an open relationship may have romantic, sexual, or other relationships with third parties. Each specific case of an open relationship may differ from another, because the terms of these relationships are determined by the partners individually. Flirting, dating, kissing, or sexual contact are often allowed. Open relationships most often occur when the people involved in them have romantic or sexual relationships with several partners at the same time. Such relationships can be short-term, for example, dating others, and long-term ones, for example, an open marriage. Conditions can constantly change due to the flexibility of the open relationship structure. Thus, agreements between partners can change constantly, and the circle of partners can decrease or grow. Friends with benefits relationship. It's difficult to define a friendship with perks. It lies in the middle of a friendship and a dating relationship. Friends with benefits, or FWB for short, is the term used to describe relationships in which people who are acquainted have intimate or sexual relations but are not officially dating. It's not the same as hooking up, which usually only happens once with a new person. When you're dating someone, you usually feel something special for them. In situations where there are benefits, you are merely buddies hanging around and occasionally engaging in intimate or sexual activities together. It's possible for friends with benefits to date other people. Their physical interactions are typically no strings attached. They aren't always devoted to one another. Parasocial relationships. When an ordinary user of modern media, usually television and social networks, begins to form a close relationship with a media personality, this is called a parasocial relationship. Even in conditions of limited direct communication with a media personality, such unidirectional relationships are formed, and researchers in the psychology of mass communication call these relationships illusory. This is due to the fact that a media personality involved in a parasocial relationship with a media user may not be aware of their existence. However, A parasocial relationship can arise between a person and a character from a book, movie, or television show that never existed in real life. Although the term is usually used to describe a unidirectional relationship between a media user and a celebrity. Parasocial relationships, when an ordinary user of modern media, usually television and social networks, begins to form a close relationship with a media personality, this is called a parasocial relationship. Even in conditions of limited direct communication with a media personality, such unidirectional relationships are formed, and researchers in the psychology of mass communication call these relationships illusory. This is due to the fact that a media personality involved in a parasocial relationship with a media user may not be aware of their existence. However, a parasocial relationship can arise between a person and a character from a book, movie, or television show that never existed in real life.